I have to say that was the first time I ever walked down a runway. I'm actually kind of in shock of being here. I think one of the biggest things is the circle of life of like how we got all here tonight at this time. It's kind of amazing the stories I've heard from people out in the audience, and I look back on mine and I think it's one of the most shocking because I grew up in Jersey. We played mob on the playground. If you wanted to play kickball, you had to pay us. If you wanted to swing, you had to pay us. We called those hard skills, and I went in the Marine Corps. I volunteered to be infantry. I turned down a flight contract because I wasn't on the ground. And 40 years ago, I was crawling through the mud, and I'm sitting here talking to you today. But it's really, really important. And over the years that I've done, I've had a four-stump career in the FBI. I worked fugitives, just arresting really bad people. I went undercover against the mob, the guy they wrote Sopranos about. And I learned a little bit there that your mouth gets you out of trouble more than a gun. But then I started going over to Iraq and Afghanistan. I was embedded with SEAL Team 6, Delta Force, and I really volunteered for every one of those because I felt we had to go overseas to get the terrorists. I had 4 kids, and I wanted to protect them. But what I realized after a little bit was my kids have more of a chance of dying in a school shooting than a terrorist incident. Not that you don't prevent those, but when I really started looking at it, I started doing news commentary. And there's 2 times that I was talking about shootings that were happening at schools that I had kids at. One was Chapel Hill. And as soon as I found out they were okay, the news called me and I went online. My kids were texting me from their friends that were involved in that school shooting. And I was passing it on to the audience. And it was really one of those things. And I used to, with my kids, I'd always look to protect them. I'd go into school, and when it was like, parent night, and I would look and I would figure out where in the room my kids could go. And I would tell them, I gave them like written instructions. Some of them were break the window and go out and don't look back. I'll pay for the window if it's a false alarm. But I was always looking out for the kids, and that's something that it's hard to get over. But how I got involved in this, I was doing a school shooting on TV. I think it was a Florida State one, wasn't it, Gabrielle? Yeah, so I started talking about yellow flags, the trails that these people lead to their violent arc. And I picked that term up when I was doing undercover. The main guy would always say, you always leave things. Mob guys they can't pass tests great, but they're really street smart. And if you start giving them clues, all those yellow flags are going to raise to a red flag, and they're going to figure out who you are. And I started seeing that, though, in crime. And I started seeing it in these people, that they leave yellow flags. And I talked about it on the news. And then Gabrielle reached out to me on LinkedIn. And the only people who used to be before reach out to me on LinkedIn was when I would badmouth the Chinese government for spying on us or their drone spying on us. I'd always get a vice president of a cosmetic company, Chinese woman, would send me a friend request. And I'd know, it's Chinese counterintelligence trying to figure out my network. But Gabrielle reached out to me, and she told me about the hotline. And I said, oh my God, that's the solution. I work security. I can get around any security you have, especially if I have time. And all these people are usually involved where they're doing these things. So they're going to get guns. If they don't get guns, they're going to get knives like they did up in Washington State, or they're going to get cars. They're going to get around that. That's not realistic to say that we just got to take guns away and that's the answer. I love guns. I shot them all my life. But what is the solution is if you can get into the person who's thinking about this, and it's simple words can change that trajectory of the arc that he's going to do violence. And I say he because Paul tells me it's mostly he. So I throw it out there like that. The soft skills, though, talking to people, telling them they matter, telling them life matters, telling them that they're important can change their trajectory. And it takes counselors to do that. And it sometimes takes 2 or 3 hours. And you can't say, hold on, I got to take this other call. Or you can't say, I'll call you back. You got to sit there. It takes time. And as Paul said, they're not manned all the time. I'll talk about 2 cases that we go on that it's one of those, you're taking a chance and you're like, we're lucky, but how much more can we be doing if we have the right funds? And like I said, I've never seen something where I looked at it and said, this is the solution. And it's one of those things that just kind of like, when you said it, I was just so amazed that no one hadn't thought of it before, that we can actually talk to people and talk them out of doing it. So I just commend all of you that are giving. The two cases that I want to talk about, the first one was a guy was close. He was evicted out of a group home, and he started having fantasies. I talk about that. All these people that do these violent acts, it starts with thinking about it and fantasizing and wanting that revenge. And he's going down the path. He's almost there, didn't buy the weapon, and he calls, and they talk to him, and they find out, again, it goes back to childhood trauma, which almost 99% of these plus go back to some type of childhood trauma. And they talk to him, and they tell him his life matters, and he's important, and it literally changes the trajectory. And they call him back a week later, and they check up on him. And that's the thing, that they get him help. But imagine if we didn't get that call in time to do that. And that's the other thing that comes in. Now, the other one was someone that was bent on, he just called in the middle of the night, I'm going to kill 3 people. You're not going to stop me. He was committed. They got the message in the morning, and they ended up going to local law enforcement and FBI based on his number and everything else, and they end up arresting him. And he was plotting to do this. So literally, with hardly any funds and hardly any operational staff, they have saved lives. And I don't know how many times I talk on the news about this. And I talk about it all the time. I talked about it in the Brown shooting. I talked about, I think it's like 5-10 minutes on the hotline alone. And I think we got a volunteer from that. Because when you think about it, the person who's looking at doing it, that is the way to fix it. And you can just fix it with words. And we've proven that. So I appreciate all you being out here tonight, giving what you can. And I'm going to take my walk off the runway because I just don't want to trip on going down here.